Hi guys, Ryan here. Welcome back to another video. This is a continuation of the Celestial Priest and Priestess designs for my personal project, HELLEXEN, the HERESY kind of arc of it. Following on from the thumbnails I did last time, I am in my selection process. So this entails refining them. So what I do is I make selections of usually the three main kind of silhouettes and thumbnails that I like, and then I also take elements from other thumbnails that I want to combine. So you'll see that with the blue and the green, trying to organize my thoughts visually, and then I will kind of copy merge different sections and collage them over on top of each other. And this lets me try out different ideas in a copy-paste way, just slapping them on top of each other, which is quite simple and easy in this value style. And then when they're all merged together, I'll do a quick little paint over to integrate them, fix the designs a little bit, and then move on to the next stage. So over here, I'm taking the three that I like that have been merged together to create more of a solid, comprehensive idea. And for me personally, I like to write notes. It helps me organize my thoughts, especially if I'm coming back to a project after not having touched it for a day or two. So I've got my references on the side, and I've made notes for each three designs. So this one here is a sci-fi. It's got elements of these kind of concentric circles, swoops, ornate pieces, but with geometric shapes and forms to it. So you'll see me jump around between the different design boards, but I'm trying to retain those keywords in my head, which informs how I use those references. So one thing to take into account here is the design at the top, the headdress areas, the main focal point. So there's going to be a lot of detail there. So you're going to want to create some areas of rest throughout the design. So in this, I'm using the cloth as an area of rest. Otherwise, there's going to be too much texture and detail. So I'm planning on having some form of concentric circle solar system pattern design on the cloth. And ideally that will be very muted compared to the ornamental aspects. So you can see when I take into a kind of three value bars here, helps the shapes read better, A, and also B, it helps me to differentiate between materials, which helps me plan when it comes to the later aspects. So you see here in a lighter value, I was testing out patterns on the shoulder pads, just kind of a shorthand note for myself for later. So this next one is more in line with deathly mausoleums, skulls, and these kind of squiggles, which are kind of archaic symbols of sunlight, sun rays, with that twisted, maybe a twisted kind of metal look, which kind of feels a bit dark fantasy. And then the danger with this is the robes and the armor and all that kind of stuff. It can look a bit too fantasy, which kind of brings back the time period, while they are meant to be kind of ancient priestesses and kind of locked away on a planet somewhere where they've kind of been abandoned by time. I still want it to read as sci-fi, so I'm putting in like on the waist almost like a energy pack or a rebreather with the pipes running around towards the back and up into the mask, which is a skull. And the actual device on the waist is designed after a pelvic bone. You can see the influences in that while trying to retain a kind of semi-organic sci-fi shape language and form to it. So with each of these three designs, if you're doing something like this, a refined design, you don't want it to be as if it's a iteration of it. You want a variation. You want 3 vastly different directions to show to a client. Got a kind of ornate, circular, sci-fi looking one. Now I've done a more of a mausoleum, crypt keeper type look. And there you see the red notes. That's me checking proportions to make sure the design works. If for some reason the proportions aren't doing too well, that's a great way to visually check. So this design here is taking inspiration from Eastern Orthodox religious outfits. I'm also trying to play with a mask-like motif to kind of represent the celestial goddess in a way. Maybe they're kind of like canopic jars where you're representing the kind of spirit, in a sense, that you're interning. So I'm trying something here with kind of bangles hanging off the arms, a different element to it. So another thing to think about when you're designing characters or anything really is to think about animation and sound design and VFX and the like. So this one's got smoke incense, it's got chains, hanging tassels, they can all be swaying in the wind. Can affect, maybe it's scraping on the ground. So you want to include things into the character design which gives other members of the team down the road something to play with and have fun with, and also impacts gameplay. Maybe you can be alert to the character coming along because you can hear it scraping, or you can see the smoke filling the room. Maybe it's doing like a boss sequence, stuff like that. See the things you want to think about when designing elements of the outfit. So this stage here, just playing around with some very simple presentation. Personally, I don't like presentation that is over the top. I want the designs to take precedence. So it's just simple graphic shapes, hyper readable, and then here I'm going once again with the red lines, saying what do I like, what do I not like, what proportions are working, what proportions are not working, and then before you send it into, hey, this is presentable, send it off. Make your own personal design decisions and changes, because when you're going through doing your first pass, you're thinking of the overall big picture. When you look at it again, ideally flip your canvas, take a break, come back 20 minutes later. You'll notice some things don't work, they're a bit disjointed, you like the design language at the top but not the bottom. Go back over it, take the extra hour or two and quote unquote fix it. Make it better. You don't want to spend too long making it perfect clean line work, because A, you'll think it's too precious and you won't want to change it, and B, 2 of them are not going to get picked. So don't waste your time having perfect clean line work and rendering when realistically that's a waste of time. All you want to do is take it to a stage where the design is communicating what you want in the most efficient way possible, and ideally in a pleasing way as well. I'm trying out, and the idea of bare skin showing with the celestial tattoos, almost like solar systems and concentric circles that would theoretically be glowing on the skin. Maybe it shows on the bare skin, and maybe it also shows through draping veils. So that also creates another element of different textures and light interaction. It's got different materials, dull, reflective, somewhere in between, translucent, opaque. So it also creates interesting texture variation. So there, I kind of like the veil sleeves hanging, but I realized that all 3 of them kind of very similar silhouette on the arms of a draping fabric. So this one's going to have the bangles, other one's going to have bare skin. The first one is going to have those long drapes. So one important thing to realize when you're doing these variations is to identify what's too similar about them. and then make it more unique. And it forces you to have different ideas when you see them all next to each other. So here I'm making them taller to kind of give them that more of that floaty, godly, priestly look, really push the proportions. They're a bit too squat before. And that's one of the dangers of working just off of a direct reference in terms of tracing over it, is you can be locked into very average proportions. Not there's anything wrong with that, it just depends on what the design task is. First, I want it to be a bit more otherworldly, so I'm going to push them to be a bit taller. So the final stage here, in a sense, is picking the one that I like the most, and then pulling the elements from the other two that I also like to create a combination, and then when that's all merged together, then alter everything to fit right in that final design pass. So I'm going to do the same technique as earlier, which is what this process allows, this kind of grayscale and sketch look, is to copy merged, slap it on top, overlay it to change the opacity, mask it out, mask it back in, and then take the elements I like, remove the elements I don't like, and work back and forth, blend, 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 to see what worked best. So the danger with the design here, where the motif is heavily on the head and shoulder pads, is that if it's a female character, it can start to look a bit too masculine. So having those extra objects pushing off of the hip area with a long waist, with a tapered dress, helps to push it back into feminine, in addition to creating that female masked look. One thing that's also nice to play with is when you get to this stage where you've copy merged and created this amalgamation, Frankenstein almost, is to remove friction. If you're still working with all the different layers, you've got your sketch, you've got your refined sketch, you've got different values, all that kind of stuff, it can make it very hard to redesign over the top because you're playing with layers. The best thing to do is to merge everything, make a safe copy first, merge everything, and then have fun with it, and just work between line and value at the exact same time. It makes it much easier to work with. So over here are the kind of finished outcomes for this stage, and then after this we're going into photo bash tests for it. Thank you very much for watching, and please subscribe if you'd like to see more.